admitting people. Well, good morning, everybody. It's 10 a.m. and welcome, as always, to our program here at LuxeSF. Today, we have our inaugural program on How to Be a Connoisseur series. We normally shy away from sort of how-to programs because they're reminiscent of cable television programming. You know, the classic travel channel, the top 10 beaches and that sort of stuff. Having said that, we thought that there's a real need for understanding connoisseurship in a day and age and a time when the notion of connoisseurship is fading away. It's becoming like the dinosaur and the dodo bird. So hence today's program. And I will talk a little bit more about that in a moment. A couple of quick pieces of housekeeping, if you will. We have muted all sound and video, but every now and then some smart person manages to bypass the system and do a double on our good friends at Zoom. If you see yourself on the screen, please unvideo yourself, because only Suzanne and I should be on the screen at any one time. If you have questions of Suzanne, we have a chat button down the bottom that you can see. Just type it in there, and I normally try to fold those questions or answer those questions as part of the ongoing discussion. And finally, the request I always get, are you recording? Yes, we are recording. It's happening right now. And at the end of today's program, we will send everybody a link to what happened today. So be on the lookout for that link, and please check your spam folders. So I'm going to read this introduction, if I may, because I want to do it the right way. We're honored to present the first in this program series entitled How to Become a Connoisseur, featuring discussions with industry luminaries in style and design, the home, art, food and wine, jewelry, and timepieces and travel. And there is a published timetable for each of these 6 programs, which run from April through November. And you will be receiving announcements for each one of these programs as they come due. In this inaugural program, we converse with Suzanne Tucker, founder of Tucker and Marks, and the person that we deem the doyen of Bay Area style and design. Now, normally we don't read introductory biographies, but Suzanne's very extensive experience and her impressive credentials demand that we do so. So allow me just a few moments to give you her background very briefly. Suzanne Tucker is the epitome of what industry design practitioners, followers, and pundits categorize as the very best of class, with an eye for creating beauty. With her global fame, her unquestioned credentials and reputation, the prominent awards by the cluster that she's received, and a project list that causes competitors to salivate, her work inspires plaudits from peers and loyalty from her clients, who appreciate that Suzanne Tucker touch, and the fact that it delivers way beyond its brief. Together with her husband and business partner, Timothy Marks, this mother, animal lover, prolific author, textile aficionado, and tough taskmaster has built a commanding, nationally acclaimed design empire that shows no sign of letting up. Her award-winning projects are frequently published in magazines worldwide. Architectural Digest has honored her repeatedly on the AD 100 list of top designers, and she is included in the Elle Decor A list and the Lux Gold list. Having worked under the legendary Michael Taylor and having referenced and often referenced as his protege, she and her husband, Tim, founded Tucker and Marks in 1986, building it into a distinguished firm that it is today. Suzanne Tucker Home was launched in 2010 with her textile, tabletop, and home furnishings line. Her first monograph, Rooms to Remember, the classic interiors of Suzanne Tucker, in 2009, was followed by the publication of her second book, Suzanne Tucker Interiors, in 2013. And I'm told that a third book is in the work for publication in the fall of this year. She is one of 4 founding directors of the National California chapter of the Institute of Classical Architecture and Art. She's been the chair of the San Francisco Fall Show since 2015, and also serves on the board of directors of the Hearst Castle Preservation Foundation and on the West Coast Council of the Garden Conservancy. In 2020, she received an honorary doctorate of humane letters from the Academy of Art University. Suzanne, welcome to the first in our series. I'm sorry for all those long words, but I did want people to hear.
Thank
That's
you.
a very impressive background.
Thank you, Al.
Let's go to 35,000 feet, and then we'll get quickly down to ground level. Connoisseurship, a word that you don't hear a lot nowadays, but what at its core does it mean to you? And at the same time, how would you profile a true connoisseur?
Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon or evening, wherever you are in Zoom land. Connoisseurship, I would say first and foremost, I would define it by someone who has deep passion. You have to have deep passion, I think, to really delve into what I would consider sort of connoisseurship, or to become a connoisseur of something and on something. And that passion is what will drive someone to go after that. And you may not even realize it when someone is pursuing it, or they may not, but you ultimately become that expert, that connoisseur, because of that drive, because of that inner passion, because of it sparks something in a human to go down that path. So,
quick interruption. Is it in the person itself, innate, or is it about the topic or the subject matter or the particular interest?
I think it has to start with the person innately, because we've all gone through school and college and so forth, and you had to do certain studies. You had to take certain math courses or history courses and so forth. But unless that sparks an interest in you, you're not going to become that mathematician who goes into the passion of figuring out algorithms and all those things. You're not going to become the art historian and go into the paintings of the Renaissance sort of thing. It has to start from within.
Is there a common profile to connoisseurs? I mean, you deal with them; they're your clients on many occasions. Do you see commonality in profile?
I do, on the level of it's when someone's speaking about the aspect that for them, they may never say, "Oh, I'm a connoisseur of something," or or shy away from that terminology or that label. But you can see it in someone when something sparks that interest. I mean, I have clients who are great art collectors. I have another client who, when you hit on archaeology and antiquities, she lights up. That's her thing. So it's interesting when it sparks that interest and you find it. And I also find, being as an interior designer and working on numerous houses and a vast variety of clients, styles, interests, and so forth, you yourself learn. It can be intimidating, absolutely, if it's not an area that you know much about or have ever delved into. But that's what I find personally for me is so wonderful, because I learn something every day. And as I tell everybody in my office, if you're not learning something every day, you're doing it wrong. So,
but you're meeting, let's assume you're meeting somebody for the first time, either in a professional or personal environment. What's that aha signal that says, or aha, I'm within the realm of a connoisseur here. This is a person who is engaged. But what are the telltale signs? Their eyes light up. What else?
Their eyes light up. In some ways, I would say it's the person who offhandedly, perhaps casually, they don't even pay attention, to what they have surrounded themselves with, which clearly is their passion, and you can see it. And then as soon as you either ask about it or address it, then their eyes light up. I have one client out of state, and I remember years ago when I first went to the house, and it had been an old Michael Taylor client from way back, and I sat down, met with them, and I sat in the living room and I realized I've never seen such a large Rothko outside of a museum. I had the most giant Stella, the 4 or 5 Diebenkorn Ocean Park series. I mean, the art was staggering, to the point where I realized I hadn't been listening to anything that they were saying for 5 minutes. And I just had to admit it. I said, time out. I said, I apologize. I am overwhelmed by your art collection. And I said, this is truly, truly breathtaking. And I said, obviously, you've been collecting for a long time. And I asked when, and it was way back. And I said, well, you've had a very good eye. And he very graciously and deferentially said, well, I had very good advisors. And I said, I think it was more than that. And he kind of lit up when I said that, because clearly that was his passion. And yet he just simply lived with it. It wasn't like saying, look at me, look at me. It was not an overt thing. On the other hand, I have, someone else who is passionate about, collecting watches. And that's one of the first things that they'll absolutely stop everything to show me the new watch.
Right.
And, that's that enthusiasm, and it's contagious. Like, okay, tell me why this watch is so special. And when you ask someone about that, their passion, their connoisseurship, that's when the connoisseur comes out. That's exciting.
The hidden creature inside.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Are you a connoisseur? I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but are you a connoisseur? And if so, about what? About life itself or specifics?
I would never use that label for myself, only because this is just me. I just find to say that about myself sounds pretentious.
But taking the assumption of pretension out of it,
Yeah.
you obviously have specific passions. What would they be?
Oh, well, gosh, passion certainly for the decorative arts, no matter whether it's antiquities or contemporary. Passion for the artisan, passion for how something is fabricated or made, passion for architecture. My love sort of run the gamut, but they all kind of fall under that umbrella of design. I took many an art history course, and writing notes in the dark back in the day. And I still find that when I go to a museum, all of that sort of comes rushing back in, which is really wonderful, because those were the courses that I loved. I never took one more math class in college. I was done with math. But, put me into interior architecture and design and art history, and all that was, to me, the best. So would I say I'm a connoisseur of a specific thing? No, I think because I have very diverse interests. And I think, connoisseur / expert, are you an expert in a field? I certainly am extremely knowledgeable when it comes to furniture and antiques and textiles and the decorative arts. But if really asked about a very specific something, I would say, let's call in that expert, right. that true person, who that is their really specific field. And a connoisseur doesn't necessarily have to be an expert in that field. You could have an expert in, Renaissance paintings, but their connoisseurship could be in, I don't know, comic books from the 1950s. Who knows?
Or food and wine, or whatever the case may be.
Exactly. It could go anything. They could be a connoisseur of caviar. And don't we all have those kind of people that we can tap into? I mean, I have a friend he's a complete caviar, nut. And I know I can just call him and say, okay, what's the best caviar right now? What should we be getting? That kind of thing. He's the go-to. So,
Suzanne, let me read you something you told me before when we had conducted an interview many years ago. You said, my home in Marin has a distinct Mediterranean flavor, a little bit French, some Italian, a good dose of my Montecito roots. Certain pieces are near and dear, especially those from Michael Taylor, Tony Duquette, Sister Parish, Tony Hall, and Pamela Harriman, whom you met in Paris. Mm-hmm. And then you said, my life lusts, I thought that was a very interesting choice of word, are many, varied, and eclectic, spending serious time in Italy, London, and Paris, dining at Noma in Copenhagen. Stunning house museums such as the Gardner Museum in Boston or the Filoli in our own backyard.
Yeah.
And I just chose some of the broader context that we discussed, but what does that say about you? How are you interpreting that? How are you interpreting yourself, given what I just said?
Diverse. Certainly diverse. And I mean, yes, that quote, that was from a long time ago. But that, it's funny because I must have just come from Copenhagen and been to eating it and dining at Anoma, which was a fabulous, incredible experience. What does that say about me? I've got a constant case of wanderlust, and I have a constant case of wanting to learn, which I always refer to people, because people shy away from education per se, as in an academic sense. So I refer to it as curiosity. I'm a very curious person, and I cultivate curiosity, and I continually go after that. I'm curious about things. I want to know about all sorts of things. So what does that make me? A jack of all trades? I don't know.
Does curiosity, and by extension wanderlust, or let's call it travel, are those essential elements? Certainly curiosity. Are those essential elements for connoisseurship?
Curiosity, yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And even travel to a certain extent.
To a certain extent, again, I think it depends what it is that turns you on. I mean, if it is, archaeology, then yes, travel will fuel and feed that curiosity. But you can also learn about archaeology as a connoisseur just from books. But there's nothing like the real thing. There's nothing like going to the real thing. There's nothing like, having homemade pasta, in the countryside of Tuscany or Umbria. Or seeing where the tiles are made, and that's the kind of thing. Or going to the Ferrari museum, which I've done with my husband. So would I have veered off the beaten path to go there? No, but I was with my husband. It's what he wanted to do, and I have to admit, I learned a lot. It was fascinating. And, I start to go for different things when I'm in Ferrari museum, because I'm looking at the colors of the car and the stitching on the upholstery and all these kind of things. And, and how in the world would you make an engine? I don't know. But I do think they go hand in hand.
To that point, are there environments that are sort of more conducive to, put another way, are there certain environments where connoisseurs hang out more than others? And I listed some of them. Certainly the home, art, dining, music, wine appreciation, fashion, apparel. You get the drift. Collectibles, jewelry. Are there certain categories where that's where connoisseurs are going to be found?
I think yes. I mean, when you're in Paris, and you go to Hotel Costa for dinner, and there's all the fashionistas, all and yeah, that's that's where it's going to be found. You go to again, back in Paris, you go to the Louvre or something like that, and that's where you're going to find the people really passionately interested about art, or any museum for that matter. So I would say yes. You can, if your passion is wine, goodness, very spoiled here in California in our own backyard. We've got, of course, the Napa Valley, and then further down the coast now, central coast of California is fantastic for wines. But then you can go all over the world. And if that's your passion, you should go all over the world to pursue that passion.
But less so the physical environment or the physical location. More, do connoisseurs tend to hang out around certain interests and certain passions, or is it very, very eclectic?
I think yes, the connoisseurs of that tend to hang out, or go to where that's feeding their passions, certainly. Whether it's the foodie, or it's the auctions, for the jewelry or the watches, or archaeology again, like, the wonderful excavations in the middle of Sicily are fantastic. But I do feel that there's an aspect of it where you can come across someone in that realm, and it can be intimidating because they're snobby about it. Or it can be the opposite. It can be completely embracing and welcome because someone is just sharing their passion. And, I'm the latter, obviously. I'm not a snob about whether someone knows about what I know about or not. If you want to learn, I'm happy to share, and vice versa. I think also that comes with somewhat experience and maturity in life, is ask those questions. Ask, why is that chair so outrageously expensive? Or why is that watch, worth $2 million? What in the world? And yet there's someone out there who can tell you and why. And the rarity, the one of the kind, that this or that. And that's where you always learn. And that is also, I think, what develops the eye for connoisseurship.
Is it taught or is it acquired over time? I remember from our previous discussion, you obviously studied under Michael Taylor.
Mm-hmm.
You attended a course at Victoria and Albert in London. You were with, I think it was Peter Hood in London. You trained
Mm-hmm.
under him. And then you've had all that experience since then. Is connoisseurship, to be a connoisseur, does that take time?
Yes.
Or can that be taught relatively quickly?
I think it takes time. Yes, it can be taught, Alf, but I don't think you can teach it relatively quickly. You can take a course in something, but that is just your groundwork. That's ground zero. And then you have to take it beyond that, either in more courses or more study. I mean, I'm a perfect example. I love architecture. I'm going off in 2 weeks for an architectural study tour in Chicago. It will run the gamut from some classic David Adler houses to some super contemporary pieces.
Why are you doing that? Why are you doing that?
Because it feeds my passion. It feeds my passion, and I love to learn. And I think that's the development of connoisseurship. What makes someone so good at that is because they're constantly learning. I don't think a true connoisseur on any subject said, oh yeah, I used to know about that, or yeah, I used to do that. No. It is with you for a lifetime.
Does it ever end?
No. Why would it? Why should it? No, I don't think so. I hope not.
Well, to that point, how do you differentiate connoisseurship from sort of the voguish nature of everything today, particularly in fashion, music, etc.? It's here for that classic 15 minutes of fame, and then it's gone. When you see something new, when do you say to yourself, or how do you say to yourself, this is going to be gone in 6 months, or I need to spend some time on this. I need to develop some interest in this.
Yeah. Fashion's a whole different thing, because that there really is. That's a whole sort of unique world unto itself, and a big world, and a big billion dollar world. But for example, recently there was the whole Kardashian culture, which I'm sorry, but hopefully it'll go away at some point. And we'll look back 50 years from now and go, oh God, remember that?
It's like the creature from the Alien that refuses to die.
Yeah, but you can't knock success. I mean, whatever it might be, you can't knock success. It's all relative. But she was, I don't even know what event it was, but of course the paparazzi were going crazy, and she was wrapped in yellow caution tape. That was her outfit, and she was there coming in through the cameras, the lights, wrapped up in yellow caution tape. And it kind of blew up the internet, Instagram. And that is not fashion. That is spectacle. And everyone looks, it's like the train wreck. Everyone looks, you're like, oh my God, I can't believe that. And then, but that's not fashion.
What is fashion? What is fashion?
Fashion can run the gamut. When you look at something and you think like Lady Gaga's wild shoes, these crazy high heels and ginormous platforms and all sparkle and just amazing. Well, guess what? That has been disseminated down to what is now approachable for the average market. The sparkle shoes are at Macy's. And the sparkle shoes with the uber high heels, but wearable, not you can break your neck, are at Bergdorf Goodman, but it's now come down. So that is fashion because it's now gone out into the everyday. Okay. So, you add that touch of sparkle in your fashion. It's just like with men's suits, ties come and go. Ties would go wide, ties would go narrow. Lapels would go wide, lapels would go narrow. That's fashion. Is it trends? I would say to some degree trends, yes. And people always ask me in design, what are the latest trends? And I'm like, well, first off, I don't believe in trends in design. Fashion is trendy. But design needs to be timeless and classic. It can be a look at me, like the Kardashian caution yellow tape, and it makes for great photographs, it makes for fun, but it won't last. Case in point about that, design and fashion and art. So when I graduated from UCLA with my handy dandy degree in design, I actually went to work at iMagnons in Beverly Hills. Fantastic experience, great business experience that I didn't learn in college. Loved the fashion. I was probably the youngest executive manager they ever had, 22 years old. And I was in charge of the Yves Saint Laurent Rive Gauche boutique and designer salon and so forth. I just went to Paris for 5 days, and I probably saw more art in 5 days than I have in 5 years. But I went specifically for the Yves Saint Laurent retrospective of 60 years since he launched his first collection. And it was brilliantly put together from 5 museums in Paris, put his couture pieces that they selected in front of the pieces of art that inspired, or the artists that inspired Yves Saint Laurent to design what he designed in fashion. And it was, here we are 60 years later, and those pieces are still classic and timeless. And they have an inspiration point, and they still hold up. You would still wear some of those things. Right. You look at them and you think, wow, but that was the artist as couturier, being inspired by the artist as painter. And that sort of, the 100 years difference and then 60 years difference, that to me is, that's fashion from the standpoint of timeless fashion that will always carry through.
You had referenced on one occasion Grace Kelly as somebody you admired for that sense of style. I would think I saw her in a movie recently, and she looks just as marvelous today
just as marvelous.
Yeah.
And the reason she still looks just as marvelous is because she didn't really change the outward package. Her wardrobe in her films and how she presented was completely timeless. It wasn't trendy. Can you imagine Grace Kelly wrapped in yellow caution tape? I mean, no. But that's why I admire someone like that. She stayed in her lane. She knew who she was. She knew how she needed to present herself. And I think I always tell people that, like, you can learn about things, you can study things, you can see what's out there, what's hot, what's not, but stay in your lane in terms of what you do well. That'll never serve you wrong. You stick to that. And I think she was someone who did that beautifully.
Suzanne, it's a gauche question, but is there a price point tied to connoisseurship?
No, absolutely not. No. Mm-mm.
Example?
Well, there's plenty of connoisseurs, I think, in fields who cannot afford what it is they are connoisseurs in.
Good point.
About.
Good point.
So you do not need to be that. No, I mean, and think of museum people. They are the experts in the fields of, little narrow niches. But are there houses filled with those things? No, of course not. They're in museums. So no, it does not have to do with price point. And just because you can afford something, that certainly doesn't make you a connoisseur. No. Mm-mm.
Let's talk about brands. I just put some down here that sort of immediate that came to mind. Brands that sort of represent the quintessence of connoisseurship. Hermes. I heard the apocryphal story that they burnt product that had been discontinued because they just didn't want it on the market to in any way deteriorate the brand. But Hermes, Van Cleef, Goyard, Bentley, Fortuny, other brands that come to your mind in terms of a commitment to connoisseurship?
Well, Hermes is sort of the poster child for that, shall you say, because, for example, they never have sales. And that's sort of unheard of in the retail world, but they never put anything on sale. And they've kept to their standards. They've kept to very, very high standards and very high quality. So, certainly of sort of the brand, what does that mean to someone? I mean, someone might just say, okay, that when I think of Hermes, I just think expensive. Okay. When someone else thinks of Hermes, they think of orange. And when someone else thinks of Hermes, they're going to think of, beautifully multicolored, printed scarves, or they're going to think of saddles, which is how they started off, making horse saddles. So, all those things that someone might associate with Hermes, the overriding factor is the best of the best, the highest quality, never compromise on quality. I think that from a branding standpoint is the key. And again, you stay in your lane. I remember years ago, the designer Bill Blass, it was sort of the very beginning, and he and Oscar de la Renta might have been the first of the fashion designers to actually kind of brand themselves and put their names to other elements besides fashion. Certainly eyeglasses, for example, sunglasses. But Bill Blass actually did, I think, Bill Blass chocolates. He then did like a Bill Blass Lincoln Continental car. It was too much. And
Holston was the worst.
Yeah, and it was kind of stupid.
Yeah.
Bill Blass himself admitted that the Lincoln Continental car was sort of stupid. It probably brought him some royalties, so that was good. But that's an example of taking a brand and sort of putting it into areas that are silly or that dilute it.
But brands that you admire, are there certain brands that you admire that either within the world of interior design or outside that world, where you really say to yourself, boy, this is a brand I would love to emulate? Yeah.
Well, I think certainly the brands in the design world, there's certain people who, again, it's about having the high bar. So Rose Tarlow, for example, Rose started off as an antiquarian and had the best antiques and really unusual pieces. She was really one of the first, if not the first, to actually take that antique table that she couldn't find anymore, or the chair that no longer she was finding them, and actually do a reproduction line. And what she did was, on her own terms, in her own time, in her own way, the highest quality, the best finishes, the best, and it's all about finishes, because you can make a beautiful frame for something, but if you screw up the finish, it's lousy. And Rose has kept to that. She actually sold it for a while, and then she bought it back, and she's never compromised on her quality. And so from a branding standpoint, and again, these aren't inexpensive pieces, but they're timeless, and you're what you're getting, what you pay for.
Let me put you on the spot for just a moment. Within yours, I want to call it a subsidiary, if I may, Suzanne Tucker Home. You have certain lines that are represented, I believe. You've got certainly San Marco dinnerware. Tell me if I'm right or wrong here. You've got Royal Limoges. You've got certainly Michael Taylor designs. You've got Chesney mantelpieces, Julia B. bed linens. When you selected these products to be part of your portfolio, if you will, at what point was it money versus complementing the line versus I have to have them?
Those all came about rather organically, interestingly enough. I didn't really seek them out. I started with my own textile line. I didn't go with a known brand or a known textile company because I really wanted to do it on my own, from the standpoint of I didn't just want to select from a fabric company's archives. I had a lot of vintage and antique pieces that I wanted to replicate myself. So, so that's how Suzanne Tucker Home started. And then it really was seeking out, I was using, for example, a lot of Julia B linens, all, beautifully embroidered and wonderful pieces and great colors. And I've always done custom linens. So we started chatting and one thing led to another. And she said, would you ever consider designing some pieces for the line? But sure. So that's what I did. Same with mantles with Chesney's. I love architecture. I love the architecture of the interior with beautiful mantles and so forth. And oftentimes we'll put in antique ones or would have them made. And that became a natural relationship as well. Like, well, would you ever design a few for Chesney's? So that's how I did that.
When will you say no? When will you say no to an inquiry or to an offer?
Oh, okay. That's easy. If Target approached me and said, oh, Suzanne Tucker, will you do a line for Target? It would probably be wonderfully lucrative, but it's not me. It would really be off brand. It just would not, it wouldn't work.
But somebody who's on brand, who would you say no to?
Hermes.
Why would you say no to Hermes?
No, I thought you said, who would I say? Oh, who would I say no to?
Who would you say no? They're on brand and you have to make the decision.
Oh, who would I say? They're on brand.
Yes.
Oh, I don't know.
You've never had that situation come up.
No, it's usually you would say no to someone who's not on brand.
Right.
But okay, I'll take it back to Bill Blass. If, a high-end chocolate company came and said to me, well, we know you love dark chocolate. I go, yes, that's true. Well, we'll do the Suzanne Tucker chocolates. I would probably say, yeah, it might be fun for holiday gifts, but in the long run, I think it's a little silly.
I got it.
Probably delicious. Everyone buy it.
Naturally. Are there what I term dog whistles or sort of visual or audio cues that sort of goes back to our opening discussion? Are there certain unseen, unheard, unwritten signs and signals and cues that tell you that you're dealing with a connoisseur here? Is it language?
Perhaps, yes. Okay, yes. An architect I work with, his vocabulary is so extensive. I mean, he really could teach the course. And I'll say, okay, dazzle me with your big words. Dazzle me with your, or what's that little detail called? And he's that. A landscape architect I work with, I'll always say to him, okay, speak Latin to me. What's the name of this plant in Latin? And he just rattles them off.
And that tells you what? That tells you what?
No, they're experts.
They know their stuff.
They're connoisseurs in their field. Yeah. I took several years of Latin, but I don't remember anything beyond amo amasamat.
Can connoisseurship apply to bad taste? And I give you the example of somebody who collects snow globes. They've got a 5,000 collection of snow globes. Is that person a connoisseur?
Yes. Yes, I would say they are. They've taken, albeit a rather odd niche, but they are the experts and the connoisseur of snow globes. And you'd be surprised when random things like that come around, where all of a sudden, a client might say, oh my God, we were so and so place, and my daughter really wanted this little silly snow globe, and it broke on the way home, and that was the only one. Hey, I know there's a guy I read about who's the expert on snow globes. That's that kind of really random thing. And someone will look at you, how do you even know this? But sure, that person's a connoisseur in a really random niche. I'm not sure it's good taste or bad taste. It's kind of just maybe lacking in taste, no taste. But yeah, I think anyone who sort of goes down that path of really, really mining and excavating their passion on something, yeah, that's a connoisseur.
What about somebody who's an aficionado of reality television? They watch every program that appears on cable television, and we know the genre. I mean, it's reality television. Is that person a connoisseur of a certain lifestyle or a certain media influence?
I
let
would
me admit,
hope,
by the way, I love some reality television.
I would hope that person is getting paid to do that, because otherwise, personally, I would find that a rather wasted life. Because those reality shows are not really reality. They're presented that way, but they're not. I mean, I've been on one of those reality shows, and they're not at all real. They're all staged.
But you used this statement, wasting life. Couldn't you say the same thing about somebody who collects millions of dollars worth of expensive estate timepieces and watches?
No, I would say that's different.
Why is that different?
That's a collector. That's a collector. It's a tangible thing, number one.
Right.
It also is an investment thing, one hopes. Usually people who are collecting things that are tangible, even as much as they love them and say, oh, I won't sell it, usually everything has a price. So that's different. There's the investment aspect of that. Obviously the connoisseur in, say, I don't know, archaeology, you can't collect archaeological digs. You have to go to the digs and see them. You might be able to collect from auction, a rare piece of, pottery from, 2nd century BC kind of thing. But no, I don't think something like, I wouldn't say you're a connoisseur of reality television if all one does is sit and watch reality television. I would say you're hiding from life.
Okay.
But I do think there's worth something to be said about checking one's brain at the door every once in a while and just zoning out.
Suzanne, we're at the 15-minute mark here, and I want to end right on the dot of 11 as we normally do. So I'm going to rush through some quick questions if I may, and I'm sorry to put you in that position. I want to read some names of people who are influences in your life based on previous interviews. You said Michael Taylor, the famed designer in San Francisco, Tony Duquette, Sister Parrish, Tony Hale, Pamela Harriman, Anna. You didn't mention this, but I had Anna Wintour in there, Peter Hood, Grace Kelly, your own husband, Timothy Marks. Pick one of those as a connoisseur and tell me why they're a connoisseur.
Okay, you named off a lot of names there.
Pick one.
I'll actually pick more than one. Tony Hale was the late Tony Hale was truly a connoisseur of furniture. He really knew his furniture. He had an amazing eye. He was really good at his antique furniture. Michael Taylor, he was a connoisseur, if you can be a connoisseur, of scale, and how placing things together, the balance, that balance of scale and proportion. He was a connoisseur on that. Tony Duquette was a connoisseur on the fanciful. He started off doing stage sets and things, and he was that connoisseur. Who else was in there? Pamela Harriman, I wouldn't say was an influence on me, although I must admit I did love reading about her a lot and meeting her. She was probably a connoisseur on
Of men.
collecting. I was going to say collecting husbands and lovers. Yeah,
Exactly.
I mean, now there's one. Um, and
And it may not all have been passion either, I might add.
no, exactly, exactly. So yeah, something was driving it, Alf.
Yeah.
Something was driving it.
I get the drift. Just some questions, Suzanne, on design. In the practice of interior design specifically, to what extent does connoisseurship drive you in your practice? I mean, there are obviously so many factors: the personality, the client, the budget, all those things. To what extent does connoisseurship provide the guiding rail?
It is dependent on project from the standpoint of style, not budget, but style. And it's interesting. A client who had done a very formal house for, they then bought a second home somewhere and very modern. And he didn't think I could do that sort of look. And I said, oh, that's all I need to hear. Just watch. So, it's hashtag modern my way. But what was great about it was that I had to sort of pull into my archives of that Michael Taylor big scale pieces in big volume rooms, edited down, but it's all still about scale. So that connoisseurship of scale, of bones, that applies for me no matter what. And then also, looking at pieces, if you don't know about a certain genre of something, like mid-century furniture. I mean, mid-century furniture is so easily knocked off, and it's very hard to tell what is the authentic, what really is the true piece. That's where you ask the questions if you want to become knowledgeable in that and not take missteps. Those missteps can be expensive. And I'm not afraid to say to a client, I don't know about that, but I'm going to come back to you with information. That serves us both.
Is there a client situation? Is there an assignment or a project situation where you will walk away because you know that there are certain elements of connoisseurship that are going to be trampled on?
Yes. Yeah.
Example,
absolutely.
without quoting names. Example.
I walked away from a project one time because the person had such a narrow, quite frankly, ugly color palette. And I couldn't get them out of just that one way of looking or thinking, and I walked away from it. I thought this will not be good. And I walked away from another project because all he cared about was trying to get the better deal and trying to get the better price,
So,
even when something already was, and it was sport for him. And I don't really like playing that game. It's not fun for me. It's fun for him, not me. So I walked away from that one.
Let's go positive. What then are the pillars, the pylons of connoisseurship that you apply generically to all of your interior design projects or to anything you do in design? What are the immutable pillars of connoisseurship for Suzanne Tucker?
Scale and proportion. Those are the things that you get those wrong, the whole thing will be wrong, no matter what the style, no matter what the color. So scale and proportion is always first and foremost. The connoisseurship, and I'm not sure that word actually applies to some of this, but let's say the expertise maybe in looking at how light affects people and how positioning, how appropriateness of place. And then also, I would say also delving into what it is that drives that person, drives that client. My staff call me the client whisperer, because I can hear things in meetings with the the whole team that other people miss. And I'm like, no, this is what they're really saying. So I think maybe that connoisseurship of being really good at examining, delving down, listening, looking, that takes time.
Can you teach connoisseurship? It goes back to the opening question before. We've got so many young people coming in nowadays, Gen Z, Gen Y, Gen. They don't have time. They're working on digital platforms. They live in a Twitter universe. Remember we said before, connoisseurship takes time, but we live in a world that's antithetical to time.
Absolutely.
So how then do you deal with a 30-year-old who, by the way, has scads of money, who desires to live a life of a connoisseur? How do you deal with that?
Well, you do need to take the time. You can't just, it's not like saying, oh, pour me a cocktail of connoisseurship and guzzle it down and I'll have another one and guzzle it down. No, you have to take the time. If it's something that you really want to know about, you've got to have that inner spark. You've got to have that passion. And it could be something really obscure or something that's, rather mundane. And I think you just simply have to make that time. And the good thing about the digital age is that in order to become that expert or to really delve into that subject, and the olden days, encyclopedias, things of the past, libraries, almost things of the past. Now, there's Professor Google. And you can go down the rabbit hole and find out so much information and learn so much. Case in point, doing a big project down in Southern California, and the gardens require fountains, and the client really wanted to create a fountain with a central fountain coming out of it, but she wants it to be for birds. So, sort of a bird bath / fountain. And so she said, I think these are going to be too deep. Well, 1, 2, 3. Guess what the ideal depth for a bird bath is? It's 2 inches. Now I know. I didn't know that 5 days ago. Now I know. So that's the beauty of the digital age, is that you can become that, expert, pretty quickly from taking the time to learn and to explore. But, I will always...
Suzanne, let me just interrupt for a moment, though. I've had interior designers tell me that their clients, we're talking the younger cohorts, will say to them, send me the plans at 3 a.m. in the morning online and I'll get you an answer at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. That can't be connoisseurship.
True.
And by the way, that's not unique. That's not a unique situation, at least based on the conversations I've had.
Right. No, I agree with you. It's not unique. But I will say you need to control that. If you're a professional, you need to control.
How?
You do not answer at 3 o'clock in the morning. That's feeding the monster. Not okay.
You set the ground rules.
Yeah, you set the ground rules. That's feeding the monster. Some clients will be respectful of people's time. Others will be, quite frankly, abusive about it. There's some clients I absolutely can engage on weekends because I know they're never going to be abusive about it. And there's other clients that there's no way I'm going to keep answering them because they will continue. So that's just know your client, know yourself. It's okay to wait. And I'm guilty of that too. I send a text message and I really want an answer back right away.
Exactly.
We're all guilty of that. But at the same time, getting back to kind of what you're going to be good at, you have to take that time to step aside and be good at something and learn about it.
Suzanne, we're at the 5-minute mark here. The 2 questions I do want to ask. first one is sort of tactical and procedural. Are there activities or practices that helps one become a connoisseur? I mean, we know that philosophically it requires passion. You said it's certainly constant learning. You never give up on it, and it takes time. We know that. But other than that, are there certain media influences that we should be following? Are there individuals or brands we should be following? Are there travel experiences that are an absolute must in one's life? My wife will say you have to go to Italy before you die, period.
I would agree.
Organizations that you should join, social media influences that you should follow. Do you have a checklist of things that you know you go to round yourself out?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, for example, I've always, been a supporter of our San Francisco museums, from MoMA to the Legion of Honor to the De Young, and there's even the Discovery Museum down here in Marin. I think we're inundated these days, and I think you have to learn to be your own editor. I do like Instagram because it's visuals, and I hate Facebook. I don't do Facebook, even though I think I have 3 accounts, but I don't do it. But Instagram, for me, it's that visual thing. And I want to go in and delve into it. Zoom in on that piece of art, or that table leg, or whatever it might be. I do think there's lots of organizations. Like, for example, if someone said, I really love this piece of furniture, what is it? And I'll say, well, that's, Georgian, English Georgian, George II. Well, how do I learn about this? Oh, well, there's an organization called the Georgian Society. Join the Georgian Society, support them. Probably very little to join each year. Ascribe to whatever it is I think that interests you. There's foodies, there's travel, there's so much out there. And Instagram actually is a terrific search vehicle for those kinds of things. If you're interested in, New Guinea parakeets, hashtag New Guinea parakeets, all the New Guinea parakeets will come up.
There'll be an organization for it too. I've got a question here. I want to get this one. What city in the world most inspires you?
Most inspires me. Different reasons. Paris, because it's romantic. London, just because I love London. You're never tired of London. And Rome. And Rome, because of its ancientness, you just feel the ages. Florence, because of the art and study. I could go on. New York, because it's New York, and love New York. Still love San Francisco.
Great city.
Great
Final question. We've got people watching right now. Give them a piece of advice. They may not consider themselves connoisseurs. They may aspire to be a connoisseur on a particular topic or subject area of interest. What advice would you give them in this fast-paced world where we don't have enough time, or we don't get enough sleep?
Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to admit what you don't know. Cultivate curiosity, and develop your own passion. Yeah.
Do you do that yourself?
All that, yes, all of that. Yeah.
And I come back to the start again. If you're, I'm going to call you a connoisseur, so it takes the pain away from you.
Thank you.
You therefore are a connoisseur in life of what? The major categories for you, the major interests for you as a connoisseur are what?
Architecture, design, textiles, and a really obscure little collection that I have, not so little anymore, of 18th and 19th century cowrie shell snuff boxes, silver mounted snuff boxes.
How big is that collection?
At the last count, I think there's 36 of them over there.
Why?
Because they started for a sentimental reason, where a dear family friend, the closest thing I had to a grandmother, had died, and there was an estate sale, and when I walked into the house and I looked to my left, I saw these 3 cowrie shells, and I just thought, I love those, and I bought them, and they always made me think of her, and that started my collection, and that was 25 years ago.
Google says you're the actually foremost cowrie shell collecting expert in the world. You should know that. Suzanne, thank you very, very much for a great conversation today. It's we really appreciate it and appreciate the time you've spent with us. You're very gracious and you're very generous, as you always are. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we are adjourned for the day. I would remind you again that we will send out a recording link for today's recording, today's conversation with Suzanne. You will receive some notifications as additional programs. The next one coming up is on May the 12th with it's on the subject of jewelry and timepieces. It's going to be a great program as well. So with that, we adjourn. And again, Suzanne, we say to you, thank you very, very much for being with us today. It's been our delight and our pleasure.
Well, and mine as well. Thank you so much. Thank you for everyone for tuning in. Thank you.
And now back to work.
Yes.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.